Okay, we are discussing about the cell membrane ma. Okay, the cell membrane. Okay, the structural composition of a cell membrane was only we are able to understand only with the invention of this electron microscope. After the invention, okay, the chemical composition of cell membrane was known before only, but the structural organization, that means how these chemical molecules are arranged. Okay, all these molecules in the cell membrane are arranged in a order, that we came to evident only after the invention of electron microscope in the year 1950s. Okay, that is. And next, according to that, what they are saying means the cell membrane is a bilayer. Okay, that means the lipid molecules are arranged in two layers. Okay, in which, okay, when you observe a lipid molecule consists of mainly two parts. One is a hydrophilic head, and the second one is hydrophobic tails. When you observe, okay, how these hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tails are arranged means the hydrophilic heads are present towards the outer region. Okay, whereas the hydrophobic tails are present towards the inner side. Why? Because, okay, the hydrophilic heads, why they are present towards the outer region means, okay, to prevent, okay, because the hydrophobic tails, when they are reacted with water, they may lose their properties. Okay, that's why they need to be protected from the aqueous environment, the hydrophobic tails. That's why the hydrophobic tails are present towards the inner side of the plasma membrane. Okay, whereas the hydrophilic heads are present towards the outer region. And next, along with this, the major type of lipid that is present in the cell membrane is the phospholipid. And these phospholipids consist of hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails. Hydrophobic heads are present towards the outer region, and hydrophobic heads, okay, tails are present towards the inner side. And along with that, we'll find a certain cholesterol, which is also a type of lipid, is also present in between the phospholipid molecules in the cell membrane. Okay, that is what we have discussed in the last class. And next, along with that, there are other molecules are also present. That's why we said, okay, in the starting itself, we said, okay, the cell membrane is a, okay, it is made up of lipids and proteins. Okay, it is made up of lipids and proteins. So how these proteins are arranged? So when you observe here, later the biochemical investigation clearly revealed that the cell membranes also possess a protein and carbohydrate. So that means not only the lipids, okay, not only the lipids, okay, but in between the lipid layer, we'll find the proteins and carbohydrates also in the cell membrane, but in a different composition. The ratio of protein and lipid varies considerably in different cell types. Okay, that means, okay, when you observe the cell membrane is made up, okay, consisting of both lipid proteins. Okay, in all the organisms, the cell membrane is made up of lipids and proteins, but the difference is their percentage of composition. Okay, that is the ratio between protein and lipid varies considerably in different cell types. And in human beings, that means we are discussing related to human being. In human beings, the membrane of the erythrocyte, that means the RBC, the cell membrane of RBC has approximately 52% protein and 40% lipids, and the remaining other, okay, and the remaining percentage other different, okay, carbohydrates and other components are present. Okay, that is, so that means, okay, if you take a typical, because the cell membrane was first studied by using the cell membrane of a RBC, so we take the RBC membrane as the typical cell membrane. So typical cell membrane of a human, that is in the membrane of RBC, Okay, when you observe here, okay, it consists of, okay, 52% of proteins and 40% of lipids. Okay, that is that is. And next, depending upon the ease of extraction, membrane proteins can be classified as integral and peripheral proteins. So that means ease of extraction. That means how easily. Okay, that means how easily. That means okay, some proteins can be easily removed from the membrane, and some proteins, okay, it is very difficult to remove the proteins from that. That means depending upon how, okay, how we can able to remove, whether we can okay, easily remove, or it is finding difficult to remove these protein molecules from the cell membrane. Based on that, okay, the proteins are, okay, the membrane proteins that are present in the cell membrane are divided into, or classified into two types. There is integral proteins and peripheral proteins. Okay, integral proteins and peripheral proteins. What are these integral and peripheral proteins? Peripheral proteins lie on the surface of the membrane, while integral proteins are partially or totally buried in the membrane. Okay, we'll see. Okay, this is the cell membrane now. Okay, this is the cell membrane. Okay, this is the lipid layer. Okay, this round ball, okay, blue color round ball like structures is the hydrophilic heads, and this long thread like structures which are protruded into the cell membrane, they are hydrophobic tails. Hydrophobic tails. Okay, this is okay, these are okay, this is a hydrophilic, and these are hydrophobic tails. Okay, this is the lipid layer. Okay, and next, when you observe here, when you observe this lipid layer, we can observe very clearly, this is okay, this is the protein molecule. Okay, when you observe this protein molecule, this protein molecule is completely buried from out, okay, one end to the other end. Completely, the protein molecule is completely buried in the cell membrane. Okay, such a protein we are calling it as integral proteins. Okay, this is, we can see here, this is the integral protein, this is the integral protein, this is also integral protein, whether they are completely buried or partially buried in the cell membrane. Okay, such a type of proteins we are calling it as a integral proteins. Here we can see it is a partially buried and some is extended outside. Okay, partial, and we can see this protein is completely, we can see, okay, very strongly buried in that. Okay, these proteins are very difficult to remove from the cell membrane. That's why these proteins are called integral proteins of the cell membrane. And next, when you observe here, we can see here, okay, some of the protein molecules are protruding outside. These are the protein molecules which are, okay, most of the part of this protein molecule is protruded outside of the cell membrane. So these proteins which are protruding out of the membrane, we are calling it as a peripheral proteins. These are called peripheral proteins. Okay, along with that, we can observe, okay, the sugar molecules are also, okay, that means we can see the peripheral proteins are, okay, are associated with okay, the sugar molecules or carbohydrates. So that's why this protein we can also call it as a glycoprotein. Okay, the term refers to sugar molecule. So here we can see, okay, this molecule is also associated with certain okay, carbohydrates. So such proteins which are associated with the carbohydrates, we are calling them as the glycoproteins. So the proteins which are usually associated with the cell membrane, okay, they are usually glycoproteins. They are always okay, they are mostly associated with the, okay, carbohydrates. Okay, carbohydrate molecules. So that's why we are calling them as glycoproteins. Okay, now understood. Anybody is having any doubt here? Okay, how the phospholipids are arranged in the cell membrane. Okay, and next, okay, why this hydrophilic heads are present towards the outer region. And next, the ratio between the lipids in the cell membrane of RBC, and next the type of protein molecules that are present in the cell membrane, that is peripheral proteins and integral proteins. What is the difference between integral protein and peripheral proteins? Understood? Anybody is having any doubt? Okay, that is. And next, coming to the structure. Okay, the different scientists has proposed, okay, different models to explain the structure of a cell membrane. So finally we have accepted one model, okay, that is fluid mosaic model. Okay, the fluid mosaic model, that means an improved model of the structure of cell membrane was proposed by Singer and Nicholson in the year 1972. Okay, in the year 1972, okay, Singer and Nicholson, these two scientists, has okay, identify, okay, that means has clearly studied the structure of cell membrane, and they proposed a new model called as a fluid mosaic model. Fluid mosaic model, that means fluid like, that means the cell membrane is a fluid like, and it is showing mosaic like appearance. Mosaic means, for example, we can observe now in some houses we'll find mosaic flooring. Why they say it as mosaic flooring means because it is a, okay, the floor consists of different types of stones, colored, different pattern of stones are placed on the floor. That's why, okay, in irregular fashion. That's why we are calling it as a mosaic flooring. In the same manner, when you observe the cell membrane also, okay, the cell membrane is also having some proteins in between, different types of proteins in between, that is integral proteins, peripheral proteins of different types, which is making the cell membrane as a mosaic in appearance, and it is showing, okay, and it is okay, providing certain fluid nature. Why we are saying that the cell membrane is having certain fluid nature means, okay, when you observe here, okay, when you observe here, okay, when you observe, there are some molecules which are moving across the membrane into the cell, and at the same time some molecules from the cell, okay, that is present inside the cell will move out of the cell. Okay, if the cell membrane is very tough and rigid, how these molecules are able to move? And at the same time, when you observe here, how these molecules are transported means, the molecules are transported by the some proteins that are present, that is some transport proteins that are present in the cell membrane. Okay, here when you observe this transportation, okay, the transportation of these molecules will not occur by themselves. What happens means, okay, the protein molecule, the integral protein molecules that are present with the cell membrane, okay, for example, if a molecule has to move from outside to inside, okay, the protein molecule which is present towards the outer region will get attached with the molecule which need to be transported. And now what happens, this molecule cannot move, the molecule which need to be transported will not move. The protein molecule which is present in the cell membrane will rotate within the cell membrane and discharges the molecule towards the inside, and discharges the molecule towards the inside. So here, that means that the protein molecule which is present inside the cell membrane, it is able to move within the membrane. It cannot move away from the membrane, but within the membrane it is able to move. okay, if any molecule is moving within the any structure, okay, when it's possible means it is possible only when it is having certain fluid in nature. When it is having certain fluidity in nature, that means this protein molecule which is present within the lipid layer, okay, it is able to move within the, or it is able to okay, undergo certain movement within the membrane and able to transport the molecules from one side of the membrane to the other side of the membrane. So that, okay, this movement of the protein molecule within the cell membrane is explaining the certain fluid nature of the cell membrane. So by observing this property, okay, this Singer and Nicholson has proposed the fluid mosaic model of a cell membrane, which is widely accepted. So most of the scientists have accepted this model of brain. So that's what we can see here. According to this, the quasi-fluid nature, that means not completely, okay, that is a partially fluid nature. Quasi means partially fluid nature. So quasi fluid nature of lipid enables, that means why this protein molecule is able to move within the cell membrane means it is only because of the presence of lipid molecules within the cell membrane. So that is that lipid molecules are providing certain okay, this is fluid nature, that is the quasi fluid nature of lipid enables the lateral movement of proteins within the overall bilayer. That means within that bilayer only the protein molecule will move. It will not move, okay, it will not come out of the cell membrane completely. Within that cell membrane, between that lipid bilayer, within that lipid bilayer only, okay, this protein molecule is supposed to move and able to transport the molecules. Okay, this ability to move within the membrane is measured as its fluidity. So this movement, okay, of this protein molecule which is observed in the cell membrane due to the presence of this lipid molecules, okay, it is making the cell membrane a little bit fluid in nature, okay, providing certain fluidity nature. That's why we are, okay, that's why the Singer and Nicholson has proposed this fluid mosaic model, okay, and it was accepted by most of the scientists. So that is so the fluid nature of the membrane is also important from the point of view of functions like a cell growth. That means if that fluid is nature, that okay, the fluid nature is there, then it can grow. And next, the formation of intercellular junction. That means okay, that means some communication between the adjacent cells will be there now between the cells. Okay, that communication is because of the presence of certain junctions, and how these okay, these junctions are made possible only because of the presence of this fluid nature. And next, the secretion of certain molecules, certain substances. And next, endocytosis, that is intake of molecules and other substances. Okay, and next, the cell division. Okay, the cell division is also possible only because of the presence of this fluid nature of the cell membrane. The cell is able to divide. If it is made up of hard and tough layer, okay, then the cell, okay, the division of the cell becomes very difficult. Okay, the division of the cell becomes very difficult. That's why, okay, this presence of this fluid nature only, all these properties of the cell is that is cell growth. And next, intercellular junctions, secretion of substances, endocytosis, that is the intake of molecules, and next, cell division. All these properties are exhibited only because of the presence of fluid nature of the cell. Understand? Anybody is having any doubt? Okay. And next, one of the most important functions of the plasma membrane is the transport of the molecules across it. Okay, already we told you very clearly. Okay, the cell membrane. Okay, the cell membrane is a selectively permeable membrane. That means it allows only certain substances because it is the living layer. Even if you take the plant cells, okay, the plant cells are covered by cell wall. Inner to the cell wall, we'll find the plasma membrane. Cell wall is a membrane. Okay, membrane like it is a permeable membrane. It does not restrict any substances. It will allow all the substances to pass through it. But when you observe the plasma membrane or a cell membrane, okay, it is a selectively permeable membrane. Okay, and okay, that means it is okay, it is having the property of a transport of molecules across it into and outside. Into, okay, that means into the cell as well as from the cell to the outside. So the membrane is selectively permeable. That means the molecules are okay, some selected molecules only can pass through the membrane, not all the molecules. Okay, that is, the membrane is selectively permeable to some molecules present on either side of it, either side, towards inside and towards outside. Okay, and next, that's why all molecules are not coming out from the cell. All the molecules that are present in the environment will not enter into the cell in which that cell is present. So only certain molecules only entering into the cell. And next, many molecules can move briefly across the membrane without any requirement of energy, and this is called passive transport. Okay, that is many molecules can cross the membrane or can cross the cell membrane or plasma membrane, okay, without the requirement of energy, without any requirement, according to their concentration gradient. Okay, because of the difference in the, okay, because of the difference in the concentration between the molecules, okay, between the environment and the cell. Okay, the molecules can easily pass in and out. Okay, and okay, without a requirement or without spending any energy. Okay, and this type of molecules across the membrane without the requirement of energy, we are calling it as a passive transport. We are calling it as a passive transport. Most of the molecules will be transported by passive transport. And next, the neutrals, okay, neutral solutes may move across the membrane by a process of simple diffusion along the concentration gradient, that is from higher concentration to the lower. Okay, here solutes means liquids. Okay, the fluid, okay, generally that is water. Okay, in living organisms we'll find mostly the water. So how the water is moving means the movement of water will take place, or the solutes are moving across the membrane by a process of simple diffusion, okay, according to along the concentration gradient. That is, concentration gradient means a difference in their concentration, that is from higher concentration to lower concentration. Higher concentration of the solute from the region of a higher concentrated solute to the region of a, okay, lower concentrated solute. Okay, there is a, and next, water may also move across this membrane from higher to lower concentration. Movement of water by diffusion is called osmosis. Okay, this movement, okay, that means the movement of solute. Solute means okay, the different types of substances that are dissolved and that are dissolved in the water, and the water is the solvent. Okay, the water is the solvent. So here the water also has to be transported across the membrane. Okay, this transport of water also occurs from a higher concentration to the lower concentration. Okay, that is the region of higher water potential to the region of a lower water potential. Okay, and okay, and this process, okay, this is also a type of diffusion. But this diffusion of water, we are calling it as a osmosis. Okay, it is also a type of diffusion, but this diffusion is taking place across the membrane from the region of higher water potential to the region of lower water potential through membrane. That's why we are calling it as osmosis. Okay, and next. Okay, as the polar molecules cannot pass through the non-polar lipid layer. Okay, polar molecules means the molecules which dissolve in water. Okay, generally the molecules which are dissolving in water will not dissolve in lipids. But okay, so the molecules which are dissolved, okay, which are non-polar or which are dissolved in lipids, they can be easily transported through the lipid bilayer. Okay, they can, because they can be dissolved in that lipid, so they can be easily transported by the lipid bilayer. So they can, okay, the lipid molecules easily get transported through the lipid bilayer. But the polar molecules, that means the molecules which are dissolved in water, they cannot easily pass through the lipid layer. So as the polar molecules cannot pass through the non-polar lipid bilayer, they require a carrier protein of the membrane to facilitate their transport across the membrane. So that means, that's why that is the importance of proteins that are present in the cell membrane. Okay, these proteins, okay, some of the proteins that are present in the cell membrane are acting as a carrier molecules. That means they carry the molecules, or they transport the molecules from one side of the membrane to the other side of the membrane, and those proteins we are calling it as a carrier proteins. So that means okay, as polar molecules cannot pass through the non-polar lipid layer, they require a carrier protein of the membrane to facilitate their transport across the membrane. Okay, this also occurs along the concentration gradient. Okay, that is from higher concentration to lower concentration, but the molecules cannot pass by their own. They are taking the help of certain carrier proteins, and they are getting transported. In this process also, there is no utilization of energy, and this process we call it as a facilitated diffusion. As a facilitated, that means with the help of with the facilitation, with the help of certain molecules. Okay, with the help of certain molecules, certain protein molecules or protein carrier molecules that are present in the cell membrane. Okay, the molecules are getting transported across the membrane, but without utilization of energy. Okay, that means this is also a type of diffusion from higher concentration to lower concentration, but the molecules are not transporting by their own. So then they are taking the help. That means some molecules can pass without the requirement of protein molecule. Okay, some molecules require protein molecule. Okay, but by a process of diffusion only. By a process of diffusion only. But with the help of protein molecule, that's why we are calling it as a facilitated diffusion. But there are some molecules or few ions. Okay, a few ions or molecules are transported across the membrane. Again, is their concentration gradient, that is from lower to the higher concentration. So again, it's the concentration gradient. Okay, along the concentration gradient, that is diffusion. Okay, there is no need of spending of any energy, because from, okay, all automatically the molecules will move from higher to lower concentration by a process of diffusion. But if a molecule has to be transported, okay, if a molecule has to be transported, again it's the concentration gradient, that is from lower concentration to the higher concentration. For example, we'll take the digestive system. Okay, in the digestive system, the food material, the food is digested. For suppose if we take carbohydrates, the carbohydrates that we have taken, that means we have taken some starch material. Okay, the starch is digested and it's converted into glucose. Okay, when you observe here, initially Okay, that means how the transportation, okay, how the absorption will occur. The absorption will occur from a lumen of the intestine, okay, through the intestine into the blood capillaries or into the blood. Okay, initially the concentration of the blood, okay, the glucose concentration in the blood will be low. Okay, but okay, inside the intestine, in the lumen of the intestine, the carbohydrates are continuously getting digested and more glucose is so the concentration of the glucose is more where in the lumen of the intestine. So initially the transportation or the absorption of glucose from the lumen of the intestine into the blood will occur by diffusion, followed by facilitated diffusion. But after a certain period of time, what happens as more and more glucose is entering into the blood? The concentration of the glucose in the blood is increased. So now the concentration of the glucose in the blood is more in the intestine. But still, the glucose which is present in the intestine has to be absorbed. It should not be sent outside. It has to be absorbed. Then only it can be used for a energy production. So now the glucose has to move. Again, it's the concentration gradient, that is from lower concentration to higher concentration. Now, at this point of time, for the transportation of or for the absorption of glucose from intestine into the blood through the layers of the intestine, it requires energy. This is an example, good example for a active transport. That means if any molecule is transported against the concentration gradient, that is from lower concentration to higher concentration, okay, such a transport, okay, will require energy in the form of ATP, and that process we are calling it as a active transport. So that is okay. That's what we can see here. So a few ions or molecules are transported across the membrane against their concentration gradient, that is over to the higher concentration. Such a transport is an energy dependent process in which ATP is utilized and is called active transport. Example, the sodium and potassium pump. Wherever you are using the term pump, that refers to active transport. That means it refers to the transportation of the molecule across the membrane is taking place by utilizing energy. Okay, the sodium and potassium pump will occur, okay, during the nerve impulse generation, okay, during the muscle contraction. We'll observe these pumps, okay, to develop certain concentration gradient so that they can develop a certain electrical potential which rate the impulse. So that okay, that difference, okay, to bring the difference in their potential which will generates this electrical potential to generate the impulse. Okay, this difference has to be done. So the molecules need to be transported against the concentration, or to pump these molecules we have to undergo, and this process we are calling it as active transport. That means if any molecule is transported across the membrane, again it's the concentration gradient, that is from a lower concentration to higher concentration, okay, definitely we have to spend some energy, and that we are calling it as active transport. I'll give you a good example of active transport. For example, I gave you a bucket of water and I asked you to climb a hill from lower region to higher region. Definitely, you have to spend more energy. You have to spend energy to carry that bucket of water from lower region to higher region. That is uphill transport. Active transport, we can also call it as a uphill transport, because we have to spend energy for doing that work. That is from lower concentration to higher concentration. In the same manner, if we take the passive transport means, okay, here no spending of energy. For example, I have given a bucket of water and I asked you to to come down the hill. Okay, at that time, no need of spending that much energy. Simply, you can run down. Okay, you can run down. That is from a higher concentration to lower concentration. Here, no need of spending of energy. Okay, that is called downhill transport. Passive transport is a downhill transport, whereas active transport is the uphill transport. Like we can compare. Okay, that is about this cell membrane. Anybody is having any doubt regarding the cell membrane? Okay, that is. And next, coming to the next one, that is a cell wall. Okay, that is. And next, okay, that is generally the cell wall is present in a plant cells, but absent in a animal cells. Okay, so we can see here. So as you may recall, a non-living rigid structure called the cell wall forms an outer covering for the plasma membrane of fungi and plants. Here we are discussing related to eukaryotic cells. Okay, already we have discussed about the cell. Okay, that's a this envelope. Okay, the cell envelope of prokaryotes, glycocalyx, cell wall, and plasma membrane. All together, it is forming the cell envelope. Okay, that is with reference to prokaryotes. But here we are discussing the cell wall with reference to eukaryotic cells. Okay, so that is so when you observe the eukaryotic cells, in which eukaryotic cells, okay, in which eukaryotic cells will find the cell walls means the cell wall, okay, the cells of a fungi and plants. Okay, the cells of fungi and plants usually consists of a cell wall outside the plasma membrane. Outside the plasma membrane. And next, cell wall not only gives shape to the cell and protects the cell from mechanical damage and infection. Okay, that means when you observe here, okay, the cell wall not only gives shape to the cell, but also protects the cell from mechanical damage and infection, because the cell wall is so tough now. It is a hard and a tough layer. That's why, okay, it will give shape and also provides a mechanical support to the body and protects the cell from mechanical damage and infection. And it also helps in cell-to-cell interaction and provides a barrier to undesirable macromolecules. Okay, any small molecule can easily pass. But okay, the molecules which are larger in size than the pore size of the cell wall, they cannot pass through it. So usually it does not allow macromolecules to pass through it. Only small molecules, okay, small micromolecules can be passed through it. Okay, that is so. So it will provide shape. It protects the cell from mechanical damage and infection. Okay, and it also helps in interaction, cell-to-cell interaction, and act as a barrier to undesirable macromolecules, not micromolecules. Micromolecules, any micromolecule can pass, but a macromolecules prevented. Okay, that means the molecules which are of larger in size than the pore size of the cell wall, They cannot be passed through. Okay. And next, when you observe this cell wall, the cell wall is made up of different chemical substances in different organisms. For example, if you take algae have cell wall made of cellulose, galactans, mannans, and minerals like a calcium carbonate. Okay, there is a, so when you observe in algae, okay, they also consist of cellulose. The cell wall consists of cellulose. Along with the cellulose, other substances are also present, like galactans. Some possess galactans, some possess mannans. Okay, these are all the different types of carbohydrates. Okay, different. Okay, that is a okay. And next, minerals. Some minerals also present, like calcium carbonate. While in other plants, that means algae is also a plant. No. So, but when it comes to other plants, it consists of mostly cellulose, hemicellulose, pectins, and proteins. Okay, that is cellulose, hemicellulose, and pectins. These are all carbohydrates, and some proteins are also associated with the cell wall. Okay, that is we can see here. So the cell wall, okay. Okay, the cell wall of a young plant cell, the primary wall is capable of growth. That means, okay, when the cell wall, okay, when the plant cell is young, okay, when the plant cell, that means, okay, this primary cell wall is capable of growth, which gradually diminishes as the cell matures, and the secondary wall is formed on the inner side of the cell. Okay, that means till the plant cell is having primary cell wall. What is that primary cell wall means? Primary cell wall is made up of cellulose. Okay, till the cell wall consists of only cellulose, the cell is capable of undergoing growth. But as that time progress, the cell get matured. Okay, as the cell matures, how we can know that the cell is matured means the cell when it matured, it start depositing the secondary cell wall material towards the inner side of this primary cell wall. Okay, once the cell starts producing the secondary cell wall material, okay, on the inner side, okay, the cell that is between the okay cell wall and the plasma membrane, the material is deposited. As a result, slowly the cell loses its ability to grow and divide. Okay, that is so that means that okay, that means once the cell wall material is deposited, the cell cannot grow, and the cell cannot even divide also. That's why we can observe very clearly, okay, while we are studying about the secondary growth, okay, why this collenchyma and sclerenchyma are unable to undergo de-differentiation to form the okay, this lateral meristem or a cambium means. Why? Because they are having second cell wall materials. Because of the okay presence of this cell wall okay secondary cell wall materials, they can't able to grow, or even they could not able to divide. Only the parenchyma cells, which consists of primary cell wall material as cellulose, those only can able to retain the property of cell division. That means they can only undergo de-differentiation to transform into cambial cells or a lateral meristem to undergo secondary growth. We can understand from here. So that is okay. The cell wall of a young plant cell, the primary wall is capable of growth, while gradually diminishes as the cell matures, and the secondary wall is formed on the inner side of the cell, that is towards the membrane. That is between the cell membrane and the cell, okay, the primary cell wall, okay, the secondary cell wall material will be deposited. And next, another one, okay, that means in between the adjacent cell walls of the, okay, cell walls, okay, between the adjacent cell walls of the cells, okay, we'll find another layer, that is the middle lamella. Okay, the middle lamella is a layer mainly of calcium pectate, which holds or glues like means gum, okay, like a gum like material. Okay, this middle lamella will act like a gum like material and helps in a attachment with the adjacent cells of the plant. So that is the middle lamella is a layer mainly of calcium pectate, which holds or glues the different neighboring cells together. And the cell wall and the middle lamella may be traversed by plasmodesmata, which connect the cytoplasm of the neighboring cells. That means, okay, that means at some points we'll find certain openings. That means at the is okay. That means when you observe the plant cells at some places, okay, the cell is devoid of. That means devoid means absent of a cell wall and middle lamella, okay, and forms like a pore like structures, okay, through which the cytoplasm or the cytoplasmic strands of one cell will extend into the another or adjacent cell. And these cytoplasmic strands which are extended between the adjacent cells, we are calling it as a plasmodesmata, okay, which is very, very important for communicating or to provide communication between the cells, between the neighboring cells. Okay, that is. Okay, there is the cell wall and the middle lamellae may be traversed by plasmodesmata, which connect the cytoplasm of a neighboring cells. Okay, that is about this cell wall in eukaryotes. Anybody is having any doubt regarding this cell wall, regarding the cell membrane and the cell wall? Okay, when you observe the plant cell, we can understand very clearly, ma. We can see very clearly here. We can see here very clearly. Okay, this middle line. Okay, are you able to see now? Okay, this middle line which is present. Okay, this is the cell wall of a cell, and this is the cell wall of this cell. Okay, this cell wall, and this is the inner line. Okay, the inner line represents the plasma membrane, and this is the middle line represents the middle lamella. Between the middle lamella and the cell membrane, we'll find the cell wall. So the middle lamella is the common layer for the adjacent cells. It acts as a, okay, glue-like material and holds the adjacent cells. Understand? And we can see here, in between the cells, we can observe certain connections. Okay, like this pore, like okay, when you observe the middle, okay, we can observe like this pore-like structures. Okay, through these pores, the cytoplasm of one cell will extend into the cytoplasm of the adjacent cells. Okay, these cytoplasmic strands which are extending between the adjacent cells, we are calling it as a plasmodesmata. We are calling it as a plasmodesmata. So here, so when you observe here, okay, for example, if you take this one, okay, for example, if you take this one as a parenchyma, so this is the cell wall, okay, cell wall which is made up of mainly the cellulose. But when this cell gradually matures, okay, what happens gradually? Okay, this is the cell wall and this is the cell membrane. In between these two, okay, the secondary cell wall materials like pectin or lignin. Okay, pectin is present in collenchyma. lignin, it is present in sclerenchyma. That means the parenchyma, when they get matured, depending upon the type of the secondary material that is deposited, it will be transformed into either collenchyma or sclerenchyma, depending upon the requirement of the plant. Understand? So that means the transformation occurs gradually. Okay, depending upon the requirement of the plant. That is what we can see here. Okay, that is about this cell membrane and a cell wall. Anybody is having any doubt? Anybody is having any doubt now up to now? And next, endomembrane system. Endomembrane system. Okay, that means we already said certain membrane bound structures are present within the cell. Okay, and these membrane bound structures that are present within the eukaryotic cell altogether, we call them as the endomembrane system. So that is, we can see here, while each of the membranous organelles is distinct in terms of its structure and function, many of these are considered together as the endomembrane system. Okay, that means there are different types of membrane bound structures are present, which are differed in their structure and function, but all they are membrane bound structures only. No, so that's all these membrane bound structures all together we are calling them as the endomembrane system. We are calling them as a endomembrane system because of their functions are coordinated. Why we are calling it as an endomembrane system means even though these membrane structures are having different structures and functions, but all these functions are coordinated. All these structures are coordinated. Those membrane bound structures even though they are showing different structure and function, but if their structures, okay, if their functions are coordinated, all these membrane structures all together we are calling them as a endomembrane system. That's why all the membrane bound organelles will not comes under endomembrane system. Only those cell organelles which are surrounded by membrane and those functions are coordinated, those membrane structures only will comes under endomembrane system. There are other membrane bound organelles are also there, which are not included under endomembrane system. So here, what are the structures or what are the cell organelles that are included under the endomembrane system means the endomembrane system includes endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, and vacuoles. Okay, the endomembrane system includes endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, and vacuoles. These structures will form the part of endomembrane system, not the other ones. Okay, there are mitochondria, okay, chloroplast, okay, like this there are ribosomes, okay, non-membrane bound organelles like ribosomes, these are also present, but they are not forming the part. Why? Because since the functions of mitochondria, chloroplast, and peroxisomes are not coordinated with the above compartments, these are not considered as the part of the endomembrane system. So that is so mitochondria will function individually. It is not related with any other structures. Okay, chloroplast also function individually. Peroxisomes also function individually. They do not coordinate with the other cell organelles that are present in the cell. That's why, okay, these mitochondria, chloroplast, and peroxisomes, even included by membrane, but they are not included under the endomembrane system because their functions are not coordinated with the other membrane cell organelles. Okay, that is that is about this endomembrane system. Okay, the different cell organelles. Okay, we'll discuss in detail about the different cell organelles in the next class. Okay.